Welcome to my review of Gooding the Polymath from the Rippaverse. This is the first collection book that they're calling it. I don't know what that necessarily means for the future of the character and like other future stories you'll see with this character, but this is the first not numbered number one for the book, so it's not like Isom number 1 and 2 or Yaira number 1, Alpha Core number 1. This is just a singular story, at least for the moment it seems, and it's kind of testing the waters with some different characters that were kind of lesser known that were kind of popping up through the different Rippaverse books. So Gooding the Polymath, this is a character that I don't have much feeling towards going into this book, because he popped up for a moment in Isom number 2, and he's pretty cool. You know, he's got some cool tech stuff. He's able to help Isom out. But besides that, we didn't know much about him. So that's kind of the point. It's like we're going to get a story here of who is this guy. So there's going to be no spoilers in this, as I usually do with my Rippaverse things, because it's relatively new. It just released. This story is different from the other Rippaverse books so far because it feels like a full origin story. We've seen little bits of Isom as a superhero in the past, like flashbacks. But this one, we've seen little bits of even Yaira's, history now in her book. But this is like a full origin. We know kind of where he's beginning and where he has started in this book, because this book actually goes back to when he is a kid. And we get to learn and progress through the book. We get to see his intelligence, his different abilities in terms of developing tech and all that stuff. And we get to see that progress over different years. It kind of breaks into pieces of his kind of starting in school and then through adulthood, and kind of where we might have seen him sort of with Isom, where he's established in, Floor Spark and whatnot. So he's established, and that's kind of what they're trying to do here. So I initially thought maybe this would be a single story that ends up kind of wrapping up in a way, but could still be open-ended. It felt way more open-ended with this one than I expected it to be. So I'm thinking we may get his story continued in some way going forwards. I hope we do, because I actually really like the villain in this. There's a great potential for the villain. It does feel like a full origin story to kind of catch us up to kind of who he is and where his character fits, because his character, I don't feel like he's a main character type of character. At least as of right now, I don't feel like he's that character that he just doesn't feel like a main. Maybe it's because he came in as a random side character initially in Isom 2, but he didn't really feel like a main character, and honestly, he still doesn't yet. But there is one big thing of the book I did like, and I will get to that, and that is the villain. This book breaks between Gooding's story, Kato Gooding, and the villain. And the villain of this story, again, no spoilers, but it's a very personal character to Gooding from his childhood. We follow that character alongside Kato Gooding. So the two characters have initial, I would say, personal history, I would say, and then they kind of break off, and then it's like a revelation that this is a villain later at the end of the book, and then you get some cool fights with the villain and whatnot. And the villain itself, even though the book seems really fast, that is my biggest issue, I think, with the book, is the book just feels way too quick, and especially since it's the smallest book so far. It's the smallest book of the Rippaverse book so far, and it went by really fast because they're trying to tell you the whole kind of origin of Gooding and also integrate the story of the villain. So I didn't really personally connect all too much to the characters, at least as of yet, in this book, and that is something that I definitely wish I would have. So I didn't feel as much of a connection with the characters in this. Let's say something like Alpha Core, which I think Alpha Core was probably my favorite book still of all the Rippaverse books. But I didn't feel as much connection yet with the characters as I did in those. But there's still more to explore, because they left this book open-ended so they can do a lot more. Now, when it comes to the world of Floor Spark and just, the world of the Rippaverse in general, we always have these excepts going around. It's basically like the superhero type of characters with powers in the Rippaverse. And we don't actually see, at least unless there's one hidden somewhere, very slightly that I didn't really notice, but there's no focus on any except characters at all. You have Gooding, who is very intelligent, and he's got his technology and stuff, and then you have the villain, which I guess that kind of spoils something, but it also, I'm not going to tell you what he is or what he can do or what kind of villain he is, but there's no excepts in this book. Now, I've also mentioned in other videos where, you know, the Alpha Core are like the only ones so far that have shown up like everywhere in every single book so far. They've kind of interlinked all the books. They've shown up everywhere. The Alpha Core does not show up. So it's the first time they don't really show up in the book, but they do get mentioned. Brian Solari does get mentioned for a quick moment. So if you want to keep that thread alive in that way, I suppose they've been mentioned a little bit in this book. But there is a quick mention of the Alpha Core, so that is kind of the only interconnection there besides this being a character from Isom 2. But as I said, I think the villain is the strongest character for this book, and I think there is a lot of potential for him, especially since they did leave it open-ended, so there's more story to tell. There's a lot more story to tell with just that character, the villain, and Gooding. So I'm excited to see if they go forward and go ahead and do more of that with Mike Barrett and Will Conrad, who have done this book. I hope they do more. I do hope they do more, especially because I want to see the villain. I do like Lillian and Michael still the most from Alpha Core. I think those are my favorite Rippaverse villains so far. Those are still my top. But I think this villain right here, I think he can easily have a great potential to be the best villain of the Rippaverse, at least as of yet. I really like what he's able to do. I think it's pretty brutal, and I think if you use him right in certain ways, and you know, I would love to see some of the established heroes already in the Rippaverse maybe face off against this guy, because you know, obviously it's a personal type of character that links with Gooding, but it would be pretty cool to see him fight some of our other heroes as well, because he's got a pretty wicked ability that I'm not going to get into. Really, overall, my feelings of the book is it was just very quick. It was very quick, and I don't know if they were trying to make it quick, you know, to get to the point, because if, you know, they decided to just kind of have this be the only book, then, you know, you kind of got a story there and you got a villain that may show up somewhere else. Obviously, Gooding, I could see him showing up in some more Isom. But if you want to go forward and do more, I think they very well could, and I would love to see it more because of the villain. I really, really enjoyed the villain of this book, and I think there is extreme potential to have him be incredibly powerful, incredibly interesting within the Rippaverse, and I want to see more of him because he's a cold character. He's a very cold character, and they established that pretty quickly, that he is just very, very cold, and there are reasons why he's just the way he is. Some people are just not good. They're just not good. So again, the villain is my highlight of the book. Gooding himself is fine. You know, he's kind of just the character you expect him to be. You know, as you saw in Isom, for example, he's very intelligent, very smart, good in school. He built his way up through his intelligence. With his intelligence, just how smart he is, and good with tech that he is, and he got himself there to where he is now, helping out people and, you know, helping out the city and whatnot. So I think it just establishes that Gooding is just kind of a character that'll show up every now and then. I think that'll work for him too, if that's what they do with him. But Gooding is fine. There's nothing wrong with Gooding in the book. It just felt very quick. And the more interesting part to me was the villain, which I think can branch out to lots of other things for the Rippaverse. So that is Gooding the Polymath. Shorter book for the Rippaverse, and I definitely do want to see more. I don't want to read it and like, okay, you know, it really wasn't anything crazy awesome, and I don't want to see any more. No, I do want to see more. They left it to the point where I want to see more, and it was just kind of a quick origin to get you to know who Gooding is and maybe some other people that are around in his life, and what kind of role he plays within the Rippaverse. So I do like that. I'm still hanging on to Alpha Core, I think, as my top book so far in the Rippaverse. We'll see if that changes anytime soon. But I've enjoyed lots of different parts of all these books so far, for sure. I haven't hated a book at all yet. I haven't really just put a book down after I'm done reading it. I haven't put one down and say, man, I really didn't like that. I have not done that yet. So they're doing something right. They're establishing different characters. I like it. And I'm looking forward to Isom 3, Bloodruth, the Horseman character, which is by Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett again from Alpha Core. So I mean, maybe I'll really like the Horseman because I really like Alpha Core. But I think this is a well done book to establish who Gooding kind of is, and they established a really cool villain, and I want to see more of the villain.